No, it's not a movie. It's crazy. Oh, George, don't come in. Get up, oh, get up, on! Oh, it was all a dream. Thank goodness. Oh, wow. Thank goodness. Still tons of time to record Dave on the Santa Maria! What up, YouTube? It's your boy. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. No, I still don't want to do that. Because I'm a grown man. And my wife says I don't have to do anything I don't want to. Hello again, YouTube. It's Dave on Jays here to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays 2023 edition. Somehow it's late March, which means it's time to talk about baseball. And I was almost certain that I had like this whole channel where I did that, and it turns out I was right. So here we are. We're back again. Hooray! Those of you who were with me last year might remember that I went off to the cottage, and then I got married, and then we went on our honeymoon, and then it was Thanksgiving, then the season was over. And the way it ended, it was kind of like a situation where I don't want to speak for anyone else here, but I didn't want to talk about it, and most people I knew didn't really want to talk about it either. So I just, wanted to, I don't know, not talk about baseball for the foreseeable future at that point. I think y'all feel me on that one, right? No, at that point I was ready to move on to a more positive experience, like talking about the Toronto Maple. Yeah, I just cut that bit. That wasn't going anywhere I wanted to go. But anyway, new year, new me, certainly new Blue Jays. Well, many new Blue Jays. So we should talk about that in advance of their first game, which is somehow tomorrow. So let's get to it. So what I want to do here is I want to talk about the various subgroups within the team, talking about outfield, infield, starting rotation, and the bullpen, and talk about my feelings on all those things as pieces before talking about the team as a whole. Cool? Cool. I don't know why I asked you. This is my channel and my video, and if you don't agree with me, you can just leave. So we're gonna do that thing I said. So the place where the Blue Jays arguably had the most change would be in the outfield. Gone are Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Teoscar Hernandez. Our smiles above replacement are gonna go through the floor, y'all. It was unbelievable. Those guys were so much fun. They felt like they were part of our family, and now they're both gone at the same time. I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, I largely do. I'm generally kind of positive. I kind of feel pretty good about it, but at the same time, ouch, man, I love those two guys. They were a joy. Replacing them are former public enemy #1 Kevin Kiermaier and internet darling that no one outside of like the Blue Jays subreddit had ever heard of, Dalton Varsho. Generally speaking, most people are saying this is kind of an upgrade, ? In some ways, maybe not some others. But it certainly is a change of pace and a shift in tone. First, some words about the guys we lost. Teo has the brightest smile that anyone's ever seen in our entire lives. His smile might have been the secret to cold fusion. We'll never know now because he's been banished to the West Coast where there is no sunlight or laughter. But he will be sorely missed, if only because, man, that guy brightened every room he ever walked into. He was also pretty good at baseball. I keep on talking about him in these terms like he wasn't actually a good baseball player. He was and is, and he'll be missed on that level too, I guess. Lourdes Gurriel is a bit more of a mixed bag. He certainly had his great moments, and last year he hit above 300, and the old school baseball heads love that kind of thing. But on the whole, he was more fun than good. Like, remember a couple years ago where he out of nowhere developed this laser-accurate cannon of an arm out of left field where no one has that? And he's gunning down guys at home plate from left field on the regular? Boy, it was so much fun. It was so fun that it momentarily distracted us from the fact that he was an awful fielder and took, like, comically bad routes to the ball all the time. It actually gave me heartburn. Combine that with an irregular ability to contribute at the plate. He would get red hot for like 6 weeks and then disappear for weeks at a time. He was basically Adam Lind when we stuck him in the outfield, but with a good arm, but with terrible roots. And even then, this might be overselling him a little bit. Adam Lind was slightly more consistent than Lourdes was. I love that hair. I loved it. I love the hair a lot. I should also mention that Teo wasn't exactly a delight defensively either. He got miles better than he was when he first showed up on the Jays, and when we first stuck him out there for regular playing time in right field. He was an unmitigated disaster initially, and he was elevated to not horrible. So, progress. We weren't like the worst outfield defense in the league last year or anything like that, but among playoff contenders, one of the worst, absolutely. And we did absolutely nothing to improve that, Raimel Tapia notwithstanding. He was not the answer, even a little bit. And having Bradley Zimmer out there is just, he's such a black hole on offense so much that he was even so bad we tried to replace him with Jackie Bradley Jr., who's the same player, but maybe slightly more name brand, and that didn't really work either. Yeah, it was just kind of a dog's breakfast all year. And it cost us. I mean, I don't know if I don't want to get to the point where I'm calling it that inning. But in regards to the playoffs and how it ended last year, I am going to talk about it as that inning. And in that inning, boy, we could have used some better outfield defense. And I think the Blue Jays front office agreed, because they shipped out the two worst defenders on the outfield and brought in two superlatively good defenders on the outfield in Platinum Gold winner Kevin Kiermaier, and they don't just hand those out, y'all. And Dalton Varsho, who pretty much was all Arizona Diamondbacks defensive highlight packages last year. I swear to God, 99% Varsho. It's just the Varsho. That's going to be his nickname, by the way, this year. The Varsho. It's inevitable. It's like the heat death of the universe. It's coming. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to accept it. So how do we feel about that? How will the whole thing shake out? Well, defensively speaking, it's going to be miles better. There's going to be a whole lot of balls to the gaps that were not possibly to be caught last year, and they're going to be caught this year. It's going to be a delight. When George Springer, who's a pretty good center fielder, gets bumped to right field because we have not one, but two guys who are even better than him in this outfield, yeah, that's pretty sweet. When all three of them are out there, that's going to be one of the best defensive outfielders in the game. Like, that's going to be absurd. It's going to be wonderful to watch. I'm really excited about it. More fun in the watching baseball sense, less than boy, these guys are really fun personalities that I like to invite to a party kind of thing. And that's valuable, but the winning baseball game thing, also valuable. I respect that. Do I have concerns? Yes. First of all, and this isn't even really about the Jays anymore, I think Teoscar Hernandez is going to have a mammoth year out in Seattle. One, it's a contract year, and Teoscar Hernandez is exactly the kind of guy who's going to step up huge and secure the bag. I 100% believe that. And he's going to be given every opportunity to do that because he's going to be playing a key role in the middle of a lineup that expects to make the postseason again. Seattle is a good team based more upon pitching. Their bullpen is electric, and the starting rotation just gets better all the time. A full season of Luis Castillo, Kirby getting another full year better, Matt Brash in the bullpen getting another full year better. I think they're going to be just electric dynamite out there. And Teo's going to be expected to provide a lot of the offense, and I think he's going to do it. I think the Blue Jays are going to feel throughout the year that, boy, it would have been nicer if that guy was having this monstrous offensive season that I think he's going to have in our uniform instead of in the uniform of a team we're competing with for a playoff spot. We might come to regret that a little bit. So that's one concern. But with regards to the personnel who are actually here, I have some concerns there too. Mostly Kevin Kiermaier. Is he going to play baseball for us? And if so, how much exactly? To paraphrase Gord Downie, like boots and hearts and center fielders who played their whole career on turf over concrete, when they start to fall apart, man, they really fall apart. Yes, that's how that song goes. Don't at me. Vernon Wells, Colby Rasmus, and Kevin Pillar, and honestly, George Springer before them, although Springer didn't really have a leg issue, but that's not here nor there. This center field in Rogers Center really just chews guys up. It's really hard to play on for a full 162. And when you're expected to hurl yourself at the baseball, go full extension to try to make that catch in the alley, coming down, well, you feel it, man. And just running around on that concrete all the time, you feel it in your legs and your hips. And what kind of surgery did Kiermaier just have again? Yeah, I'm seriously wondering if we're even going to get 80 games out of this guy. If this is a Kawhi Leonard load management type situation where, you kind of maybe play him once or twice a week at the start of the year, maybe ramp him up if everything's feeling good, with the aim of him being in the outfield when it matters in the playoffs, then fine. But I don't see a world where we get even 100 games out of Kevin Kiermaier. And if that's by design, that's great. And if that's because he just falls to mush sometime in August, that's less great. Fortunately, our entire defensive strategy does not depend upon one gently used Kevin Kiermaier, as Dalton Varsho is more than capable of playing a superlative center field. So even if the worst case scenario happens and Kiermaier is hurt, that means instead of having an outfield of Varsho, Kiermaier, Springer, you have an outfield of Varsho in center, Springer in right, and then a loose mélange of Whit Merrifield and Santiago Espinal and Nathan Lucas, maybe sometimes if he sticks around. I don't think he will. And Cavan Biggio will probably get some time out there too. And honestly, that's not bad. That's not bad. When you have a guy like Dalton Varsho who can cover the kind of ground he can as your backup center fielder, you're doing fine. I think ultimately we'll be fine on the defensive end there. And Kiermaier's not like he's bringing too much with the stick. Guy's going to bat ninth every time he's in there. He's if he gets on, great. If he doesn't, that's fine. And when he gets on base, he can kind of cause some problems, and he's a left-handed bat, and that's all very nice, but the offensive contributions are not what we got him. Let's say that. So yeah, 80 games of Kiermaier and then 80 games of a collection of other guys who aren't really outfielders but can play one on TV. It's not the best situation in the world, but there is no major league team on the planet that has a 100% like ironclad plan for their outfield. Everyone's going to be playing a loose collection of guys in their corner outfield positions at some point. That's just Major League Baseball. So we're fine. We're fine. We're fine. Less fun, but we're fine. And in fact, when we're healthy, we're better than fine. We're out friggin' standing. So positive feelings there. I'm going to miss Lourdes, I'm going to miss Teo, but ultimately, I think we improved there on the aggregate. As much turnover as there was in the outfield, but just about none on the infield. Since they made the trade at the trade deadline for Whit Merrifield, yeah, this infield is pretty much locked in. Matt Chapman somehow was rated as a not that great defender at third base last year. I wonder if anyone who gave those ratings, and I understand it's a mathematical model, so it's not like some dude sitting there with a computer and typing in, I don't like Matt Chapman. It's more like it's just because the models say that he should have made this play and didn't make this play when he should have, and all that kind of thing. Anyway, the eye test tells me Matt Chapman is incredible, so no worries there at all. Bo Bichette, I keep waiting for him to become an excellent defender, and I say that this is the year because he shows flashes of being able to do it, right? He'll turn this incredible play, and then he'll also kind of boot one the next week or whatever, and you're kind of like left scratching your head being like, is this the same guy? Yes, it is. It's just very frustrating. But there's an awful long list of great defenders who weren't always great defenders, especially at the shortstop position. I'm confident that with Bo's athleticism, with his commitment to improving, with his hard work ethic, and with his attention to detail, Bo Bichette is going to become a great shortstop, and is going to do it in 2023. There, I said it. Please don't hurt me. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., now Gold Glove first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he's going to play almost every day at first base. When he's not there, it's going to be probably Brandon Belt from time to time, and every once in a while it's also going to be Cavan Biggio or maybe Santiago Espinal. That seems kind of strange and a waste of him, but I'm told that that's going to happen sometimes too. But for the most part, it's going to be Vlad, and that's great. And then second base, where, hey, remember that mélange I talked about in left field? Yeah, those same guys rotating in second base, with Whit Merrifield probably getting the lion's share of it, Santiago Espinal as being a rotating in kind of guy, and then matchup and health-based, you're going to try to get Cavan Biggio in there sometimes too. I'm so perplexed by Biggio because I understand that the pandemic year was weird for everybody, and that it was only like 8 games. It wasn't 8 games, but you know what I'm talking about. It was very, very short and a small sample size, and you can't take anything from it. But man, Cavan Biggio was so good in 2020. He looked like he was going to be a rock-solid, excellent, high on-base percentage, just enough pop to be dangerous, excellent defensive second baseman. He was going to be the guy. And then he wasn't the guy. And a lot of that's because he got hurt, and he lost some opportunities, and Santiago Espinal just kind of like leapfrogged him in the depth chart with his own excellent play, and then you go out and get Merrifield, who considers himself an everyday player and has been an everyday player every year until he got to Toronto. I just feel for the guy, because he's got it. He's got it in him. I've seen it. I've seen it for an extended period of time. I've seen him be able to do it. Just not the last couple of years somehow. So I'm pulling for him. Cavan, I want you to supplant Whit Merrifield, and we're asking Whit Merrifield who by the end of the year, and it's a weird kind of mishmash between you against right-handers and Espinal against left-handers, and the two of you just run with it, with you getting the lion's share of the time because most pitchers in Major League Baseball are right-handed. That's what I want for you, Cavan. It's probably not going to happen, but I want it for you. Anyway, the infield's going to be fine. It's going to be better than fine. It's going to be great. We've got some star players throughout the lineup, including at first base and shortstop and third base. And then the guys we have at second base, all of whom are at least good. Infield, we are doing just fine. This team's going to be fine there. And of course, at catcher, yes, we gave up one of the best prospects in the game at catcher, and we did so without really feeling too bad about it because we have not one but two outstanding Major League catchers on the roster already. What can I say about Alejandro Kirk that hasn't been said? The guy has done nothing but rake since he came into the big leagues. Every year it seems like he's getting a little bit better, and I see no reason why that shouldn't continue, as he just had a child, and we know from Fred VanVleet fandom what happens when someone has a child. They get that dad strength, and they put up some big time numbers. So look for a big breakout from Alejandro Kirk. But at the same time, look for a huge breakout from Danny Jansen. That's not just anecdotal, he had a baby, therefore superpowers nonsense. Like, look at his numbers in September and just look at the highlight packages. The guy just rakes. It's hilarious because he was always supposed to be this offensive first catcher, right? That was always his thing, that he was this tremendous hitting catcher and that we would work on the defense when he got to the big league level. Well, he got to the big league level and he worked on the defense, and now he's got this kind of like bizarro reputation where he's this really good defensive catcher and will work on the hitting over time. The bat was always there. For whatever reason, he just couldn't put it together, or he wasn't healthy or something. It looks like he's put it together. So that means for the full 162, with these two catchers, no matter who it is who's actually doing the catcher, the Blue Jays will have a superlative offensive catcher in their lineup. I don't think there's any other team in baseball that can say that, where they have not just their one guy, but two guys who can absolutely rake at the big league level at catcher. That is a huge advantage for this ball club. I'm really excited about it. It lengthens the lineup tremendously. You can have Kirk at DH with no real problem, because also, don't forget that both Dalton Varsho and Santiago Espinal could theoretically play catcher to be your third and fourth guy respectively. So you can have no problem putting Kirk in at DH and Jansen does the catching, or vice versa. Oh my god, it's going to be so good. Speaking of designated hitter, I also have to mention Brandon Belt, who, kind of felt like an afterthought in the offseason and is kind of an afterthought in my assessment of the team, too. If he has a great season, that's great, but I don't think anyone's counting on it. With Belt, like Kiermaier, it's a question of how much he's actually going to give you. It's not a question of how much he has in the tank, but whether or not he's going to be healthy. In spring training, which is the quintessential best shape of his lifetime, right? That's the meme, that's the joke, is that everyone's in the best shape of their life. Well, both of them said that. And far be it for me to say that that's not true, but at the same time, they're both coming off fairly significant injuries and haven't really been themselves in a couple years. And boy, it'd be nice if both of them were at their absolute peak of their powers, but I'll have to see it to believe it. Let's leave it at that. Anyway, Belt's going to get a whole bunch of at-bats. Pretty much any at-bat that Raimel Tapia got last year, I think we can just kind of like pin those at-bats to Brandon Belt. Listen, I love Tapia, and that Inside the Park Grand Slam is a moment that will live in my heart forever, and probably in the heads of Red Sox fans rent-free for the rest of their lives. It was truly wonderful. But that was the high water mark. Raimel Tapia wasn't it. And Brandon Belt, honestly, probably won't be it either. But he's another attempt to just, lengthen this team, have some more quality at-bats from guys who won't necessarily play every day. Good pinch hitter, apparently. That's something he's got in his bag. He's got some experience pinch hitting and has some success doing that. That's nice. As a left-hander against some fireballing right-handers, that's fine. Except he mostly hits off-speed pitches, so against the fireballing right-handers, maybe not so useful. But anyway, maybe he'll contribute. That'd be great. Let's move on. So, the team on the field, I think, is pretty strong. I don't think we lost too much on the field when we lost Teo and Lourdes with their performance from last year. I think we will miss Teo's performance this year, which I anticipate will be monstrous compared to last year. But you can't really know the future, and you only can work with what you have right now. And with what we had right now, the team clearly wanted to do a massive upgrade in outfield defense, which they categorically did. And with the rest of the team already being really solid and one of the best offenses in baseball last year, it's kind of a steady as she goes otherwise. This team will once again hit the cover off the ball. And remember, all of this being one of the best offenses in baseball last year was with both Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., our erstwhile superstars, having down years. Bo's numbers ended up looking okay because he had that otherworldly September, and if you're only going to succeed in 1 month, I guess September really is the best one to choose. But at the same time, man, the other 5 months, you could have tried, for whatever reason it wasn't working. Whatever was doing Bo Bichette wrong during that time, did him wrong for the whole 5 months. And then he got it sorted out in September, and from what I've seen in spring training, which honestly doesn't really mean anything, he's carried that forward. So lots of predictions for a big year from Bo Bichette from other places. Some people going as far to say possible MVP consideration. That'd be nice. But the big guy who had a big step down was Vladdy. Like, Vladdy's numbers in 2021 were stupid. Any other year where Ohtani wasn't a thing, he would have won the MVP. He went from that level to a guy who didn't even win the Silver Slugger at his position. And it's not like he got supplanted by some superstar. It was Nathaniel Lowe in Texas. Are you kidding? Anyway, I don't think that's the real Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I don't think he's a hit 260, 270, 32 home runs type of dude. That's just not who this guy is. When he came up, and when he was first talked about as a prospect, people threw around Miguel Cabrera. And then in 2021, yeah, Miguel Cabrera, like prime Miguel Cabrera. That's what we saw. He was that guy. Promise fulfilled. And then a big step back last year, and it's hard to believe that that's who he truly was, and the other one was a fluke when the other one was what everyone said he would be. I think last year was the fluke. So yeah, this team already pretty good. We arguably got a little bit better or stayed the same in terms of the on-field personnel, but expect bigger seasons from Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Danny Jansen and maybe Alejandro Kirk. And if that's the case, look out. This team's going to shred. So that brings us over to the pitching side, and we have some losses there before we get to the additions. Ross Stripling was one of my favorite stories from last year because he was kind of like the swing man, the sixth starter, the in-betweener, the long man out of the pen. He was the guy with the undefined role, and it never really felt fair because he'd done nothing but succeed as a starter his whole time as a Blue Jay, but we just didn't really have a spot with him when they went out and got shiny new Yusei Kikuchi. But then, even as Kikuchi started to implode, Hyunjin Ryu got hurt. Hey, yeah, remember Hyunjin Ryu? It feels like a million years ago, but yeah, he got hurt and Stripling was thrown into the starting rotation, and boy, he delivered. He was dynamite. And it wasn't just that he was really, really good, it was the way that he was good. It felt like he was outsmarting the hitter every single time he went out there, throwing exactly the pitch they didn't want to see in exactly the one place they couldn't hit it. His stuff was never overpowering, but the results were undeniable. I'm really going to miss him as a Blue Jay, and apparently the fact that we wouldn't give him a no-trade clause was the difference between him signing here and signing elsewhere. And, I mean, I kind of get it, but at the same time, if that's the only thing standing in your way, could have gotten it done, Jays. But that's okay, because if you're going to lose Ross Stripling, replacing Ross Stripling with more veteran and more pedigree Ross Stripling in Chris Bassett, that's fine. Seriously, though, Chris Bassett, I remember when he was like the prime acquisition from the A's in their annual we're throwing out anybody with any kind of name or pulse at the trade deadline, and the Mets got him, and that was like, everyone's like, oh boy, the Mets got Chris Bassett, look out. And he performed. He was really good as a Met, and he was a big part of a really, really, really good rotation. I don't think anyone would diminish his accomplishments in New York. In New York, you'd think everyone would be talking about him. You'd think he would be able to write his own check. And yet, yeah, just the amount of ink spilled over Chris Bassett was next to nil. For whatever reason, I just never got the impression that he was that coveted a free agent, and the Blue Jays were able to acquire him for 3 years on a very reasonable deal. And apparently the reason why he chose Toronto's offer over others isn't necessarily because it was like the most lucrative offer. It was because he wanted to win the World Series, and he thought that Toronto was the best place to do that, and inject that directly into my veins, please. This is a guy who left the New York Mets, who just signed Verlander to go to the Blue Jays because he wanted to win a World Series. He's the perfect Ross Stripling replacement. I mean, he's got the 6 different pitches. He's not trying to overpower you. He's trying to outthink you. He's got complete, absolute control over where he puts the ball in the strike zone. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's a great interview. He's really cerebral, thinks about his craft. It seems like a direct one-to-one correlation, except that, Bassett's been doing it better and longer. I love it. I'm going to miss Ross Stripling, but if you're going to replace him, Chris Bassett is the ideal form of a Ross Stripling replacement, and now we have him. Hooray. I'm about to do something really criminal here, and that is not talk about the next 2 guys as much as I should, because they are about as solid and reliable performers on this team as we had all of last year. I am, of course, talking about Alek Manoah, our ace, our dog, the guy that you want in a cage match for your life at any given time. I don't care what happened in that playoff game. I don't care that the thing about pressure is for tires came back to bite him. I don't care about that. This guy is the guy you want going to war for you. This is the guy you want in Game 1 of the World Series and Game 4 and Game 7. This is the guy you want. This is the guy. He's got that dog in him. Just love that expression. It's so dumb. I love it. He's got that dog in him. But he does. He really does. And if he's the ace, Kevin Gausman as your number 2 is an absurd embarrassment of riches. This guy would be the ace on like 26 other teams. But on the Blue Jays, he gets to be the number 2 guy, and he is about as good a number 2 guy as you're going to find. Again, super reliable. You know what you're going to get for him. He had a little blip in the middle of last year, and he fixed it, and then was dynamite the rest of the way. This is another guy who thinks about his craft, who can make those adjustments, who has absolute control over what he does on any given day. If guys aren't chasing his splitter, he just kind of changes his sights a little bit and starts landing that splitter in the strike zone, and then guys are really screwed. Yeah, I love them. I love these 2 guys. I can't believe I'm not going to talk about them as much, but they're like the sun rising in the east. You count on them. If that goes, the whole season's gone. But you don't have to worry about it because they're tremendous. So I love you guys. Keep being you. Just do the exact same thing you did last year, and everyone's going to love you. We have to talk about the 2 massive elephants in the rotation. They're not actual elephants. They're human pitchers, but we have to talk about them. These are the 2 upon whom it's been mentioned that the Blue Jays season might hang. I don't necessarily agree with that, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I am, of course, talking about Jose Barrios and Yusei Kikuchi. Jose Barrios, I think people have this idea that he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball last year. He's got these inflated numbers, and everyone, it feels like he was terrible because it just you cringe when you hear his name mentioned in 2022. It was just abysmal. It's not really how it went. Pretty much, if he got out of the first inning, he was fine, and often better than fine. He was something approximating his old self. It's just that a distressing number of times, something like 10 or 12 times, he just got bombed out in the first inning and couldn't continue. And that hurts you not only because you're down like 8-1 to the Brewers or something, but also because then your bullpen is screwed. Not just that day, but for the rest of the series and for maybe the next couple of games until you have an off day. And it really sets the team back. And he did do that. That did happen a lot. But just as often, and in fact a little bit more often, he was fine. So what the hell, Jose? Considering that what we're talking about is like maybe 13 starts in 1 year versus an entire body of work of like 6 previous seasons wherein he was somewhere between pretty good and pretty great. I think we have to defer to the latter because it's such a larger body of work and you gotta feel that he's going to make some adjustments, he's going to fix stuff up. His performance at the World Baseball Classic didn't really put out any fires or make anyone cool under the collar, but I mean, you're allowed to have a bad game of March. You're allowed to have a bad game of March. That's fine. No one expects a starter to be 100% ready and at the top of their game in mid-March. It's just not, that's what spring training is for. And he missed part of that to go and be in the World Baseball Classic and pitch in this hyper-focused and specialized and really scrutinized series and be at the center of the baseball world for a minute. And he had a bad game in mid-March, which happens to starters. So, not time to panic just yet. But yeah, it'd be really nice if we got the Jose Barrios from his time with the Twins, or the Jose Barrios from the time after we acquired him in 2021, and the guy that earned that massive contract. It'd be nice if that guy made an appearance more often in 2023. If he does, we're going to have a great time this year. Speaking of a great time this year, Yusei Kikuchi turned into Sandy Koufax this spring. I know it's spring training, I know it doesn't count, I know all those numbers are absolutely nonsense, because you're oftentimes pitching against guys who haven't had an at-bat above single A. So I get it. I get that it's not real, and I shouldn't get that excited, but I'm really excited because those numbers are super sexy, you guys. Who led all of baseball in strikeouts for spring training? Yusei Kikuchi. He also had an ERA below 1. That's really great. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Don't get excited. It doesn't count. But if he was this guy, how great would that be? Pretty great. Beyond those top 5 who, barring injury, are going to get the lion's share of the starting rotation pitching. You've got guys like Mitch White is the presumptive number 6 guy. He's coming into the season hurt already, so he's not really the 6th guy right now. But, you know, presumably he's the guy who filled that role. After him, we're talking about Hyun-Jin Ryu, who theoretically is coming back sometime this summer. I'm skeptical about that because Tommy John can sometimes take a full year. Sometimes it takes a little more than a year. And the guys for whom it takes only a year are like the hyper-competitive, super yoked, can't keep them out of the gym types, and that's simply not Hyun-Jin Ryu. Now, Ryu also isn't throwing as hard as those guys, so maybe he doesn't need to be quite as yoked. But at the same time, I would be surprised if he came back. My impression when he went down was that he had thrown his last pitch as a Blue Jay. I'd love to see him back, because I think when Hyun-Jin Ryu is right, he is a really fun pitcher to watch, and what's more, he is the kind of pitcher that this rotation doesn't really have. Even the guys who aren't relying on velocity, like Manoah and Bassett and Barrios, are more kind of like the 12-6 movement, like the big fall off the map kind of situation, or like there's not. Whereas Ryu is a pitcher where every pitch looks exactly the same coming in, but it's at wildly different speeds and it cuts just a little bit, and every pitch is just annoying as a hitter. You're just annoyed the whole time, and I'm really very excited about his return if it happens. I'm just not sure that it will. No, the big gun waiting in the wings, the guy that everyone was talking about in spring training before he himself got a little bit of a shoulder thing, Ricky Tiedemann. Yes, it has been suggested in lots of other circles and will be suggested in this one that before the year is out, the 5th starter in Toronto for the Blue Jays will be Ricky Tiedemann. When I think about Ricky Tiedemann, I hope his career goes a little better than this guy, but I think about Ian Anderson when the Braves won in 2021. Anderson joined the team late, gave the team a bunch of juice with some really great performances down the stretch, and he ended up pitching in the World Series and pitching great. If Tiedemann can come in and give the team that kind of a boost late in the season, that's like going and getting an ace at the trade deadline. Having a guy come in, kick in the door, ready to dominate the big league level, that's the stuff that World Series championships are made of. Look for that to happen if he's all ready and healthy, because I think the Blue Jays brass is looking long and hard at him and just thinking about what could be. All right. We're now going to talk about the bullpen, and this is where, I mean, I've been pretty glowing, especially about the team on the field, but I've been pretty glowing about the stuff that the brass has done in the offseason. I generally think they've made the team quite a bit better. I'm less sold on what's happened with the bullpen because very little, in fact, did happen. So listen, Eric Swanson is the new guy coming in, the best part of the return in the Teo trade. I mean, we got Mako as well, but he's a prospect, and I barely heard his name after the initial puff pieces about, he lived in Canada for a bit. Yeah, but after that, you haven't really heard his name, and he's not going to contribute this year, so what do we care? Swanson is the guy who's going to contribute this year. And he had really great numbers, and he looks pretty good. But a funny thing happens when you take a look at the way he was used last year. Scott Servais, who at this point has a reputation as a really good tactical manager for the Seattle Mariners, never really used him in high leverage situations. I mean, he did occasionally, but not nearly as much as some other guys who had far less impressive numbers. He ended up, starting a lot of innings and getting clean innings to work with. And he did pretty well in those, but when you go out and you trade one of your premier sluggers for a bullpen arm, and that's the only move you make, and it's for a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of high leverage experience, it kind of makes you go, And I'm serious. No other moves were made. It's the same guys who finished last year. It's going to be Jordan Romano is your closer. You've got Swanson now, but you've got Jimmy Garcia, you've got Adam Simber, you've got Tim Meza, you've got Anthony Bass, who's the new guy. You've got, presumably, at some point, Zach Pop will come in. But until then, you've got Trevor Richards. This is the same group. This is the same crew that ended last year. And until Nate Pearson makes his appearance, I don't really believe that he's real, even though a lot of people were kind of casually saying, oh, yes, he'll contribute this year. Oh, will he? Because he hasn't yet. Man, just when that was like the focus in the trade deadline last year was this team doesn't have a good enough bullpen. There's not a lot of swing and miss. There's not a lot of high velocity. What you're talking about is Jordan Romano, and that's it. And then the only guy you get is Eric Swanson, and otherwise it's the same guys who are somewhere better than adequate, but not quite good. You know what I mean? And the projections kind of bear that out. They have the Blue Jays being somewhere in the 12th, 13th best kind of range. And for a team that really wants to win the World Series, really? This is where we are? Again? No, I'm not suggesting they go out there and blow the bank on like a Kenley Jansen. That guy's washed. And I don't really think that they should go out and burn a guy like Tiedemann or Addison Barger or any of our other big prospects to go and try to get a reliever. I mean, I get it. These are things that you don't want to spend your high-end capital on. I get it. But you gotta do something. And Eric Swanson, I guess, is something, but it's lowercase s something. You know what I mean? I'm not satisfied. That's where I'm getting at. I'm not satisfied. I don't think this bullpen is better enough than last year that we've moved the needle enough where I can say, okay, that bullpen situation is taken care of. It's not taken care of. So yeah, we're going to be right back where we were last trade deadline. At this trade deadline, we're going to be trying to find an outside arm, an arm outside the organization, and we're going to be paying prospect capital to get them, and we're going to hope that it works out. And we have this idea that the most abundant thing that you can get at the trade deadline every year is relievers. And then last year we ended up with Anthony Bass and Zach Pop, and they were fine. And Zach Pop might end up being better than fine, but it's just, when you're trying to win the World Series, I spoke about juice earlier. I've really come around to this idea that even if your team is great, even if you're the Dodgers still go out and get guys at the trade deadline because there is such thing as giving your players juice, giving them that idea of, we were already good, but look at us now. We're even better. You guys can't handle us. That swagger, that will to dominate, that cliche of cliches. You guys know what I'm talking about. If you've ever played any kind of athletic competition, every single guy who's played athletics, they all say the same thing. Having that swagger really does make a big difference. That belief that you're going to win. Not that the win's going to be handed to you, because that leads to complacence, but that belief that you can overcome any obstacle, anything that gets thrown your way, anything that goes wrong, you've got what it takes to handle it. That juice. And I don't know if going out and getting another reliever is going to provide that kind of juice. And I don't know if that's a really good use of the capital this organization has available to us, is to be constantly in search of that unicorn right-handed flamethrower that we hoped Nate Pearson would be. If Pearson is that guy, tremendous. I need to see it first, and until I see it, I won't believe it exists. So right now, we're kind of looking at, hey, Zach Pop's going to be good. We're trying to win the World Series here, guys. Is that really the best we got? Anyway, on the whole, this team's really good. We're going to win a whole bunch of ball games. We're going to maybe wish that the bullpen was a little better. Okay. I now need to give voice to something I'm actually concerned about for this year. Because I think the team on the whole is very, very good. So the Blue Jays won a whole bunch of games last year, despite the fact that a lot of things went wrong. Despite the fact that a lot of their key players had big steps back, despite the fact that a lot of other key players got hurt. Like we were missing Teo for a big chunk of last year. George Springer was not himself for the whole back half of the year. As noted, our bullpen was kind of like teetering on the edge of not that great for a big chunk of the year. We had a bunch of things go wrong, not the least of which are Jose Barrios being Jekyll and Hyde and Yusei Kikuchi being actually horrible to the point where we couldn't use him. And Hyunjin Ryu, who you kind of like count on for 180 innings, giving us maybe 20. All these things went wrong, and yet somehow the Blue Jays won 92 games. And when I say somehow, I mean one-run wins. The Blue Jays won an awful lot of one-run games, especially at the beginning of the year. And when a team does that, you say, oh, they must have a tremendous bullpen. Nope. No, what we had was the best season ever from Jordan Romano, our closer, and a whole lot of luck. These are things that, for the most part, the luck especially, that are not repeatable, that you can't count on every year. I think the Blue Jays are not going to have that luck this year, so we would be well served to be leading by 5 going into the 9th inning this year instead of by 1. And this is the thing that I'm really concerned about. Jordan Romano kind of came out of nowhere. Went from being a guy who got cut by the terrible Texas Rangers, and then all of a sudden he's this lights-out closer for a few seasons. My general feeling is that with any baseball player, but particularly with bullpen pieces, if you came out of nowhere, eventually that's where you're going to go back to. I'm really concerned that this will be the year that Jordan Romano finally flames out. That either his shtick is now well known enough that guys can gear up for his fastball, or the year that he gets really hurt and never really finds it again. Something's gonna, like, there are some stories of guys who come out of nowhere to be really good relievers for long periods of time. Certainly, there are lots of those guys. There are way more guys who have 1 or 2 or 3 great years and then fade away and we never hear from them again. So much of the talk of the bullpen this year kind of waves their hand at the idea of, well, we have an elite closer, so everything's fine. We do have an elite closer. I wonder for how long. If he can maintain it this year and continue, then, I mean, guy is on track for being one of the best Blue Jays relievers of all time. If he keeps going like this for another season or two, we'll talk about him in the same way that we talk about, like, Tom Henke and Dwayne Ward. But, I mean, for those guys, too, the end for Henke and Ward was ignominious. And when just like Boots and Hearts and those outfielders who play on concrete, when it starts to fall apart, man, it really falls apart. I hope that that's not what happens. I hope that Jordan Romano is great forever, or at least for this year. I hope that we don't end up in a situation where we have to plug in Nate Pearson out of desperation, just looking for someone with some kind of swing and miss that we can plug into our closer spot because Jordan has completely lost it, or his shoulder has fallen off, or something. It's just, it was the part of last year that was such a wonderful, not quite surprise, because Jordan had done it in 2021 as well, but a pleasant continuation of a surprise, where a guy who was nobody turns great, and then continues to be great. And now this year we're asking him to continue to be great. And everyone kind of just assumes that he's going to be great. And I guess that's the part that makes me nervous. Because if he's not great, if something goes wrong there, I mean, like we were talking about worst case scenario, if Kevin Kiermaier falls apart, we've got Varsho. If both those guys fall apart, we still have George Springer. There's redundancy. If Bo Bichette can't hack it or he gets hurt, we have Santiago Espinal, who's a fine shortstop. If Whit Merrifield completely falls apart, it gets hurt, don't worry, we got Kevin Biggio. He is a more than adequate major league replacement. There are contingencies. With the bullpen, I don't know what plan B is. Plan A is Jordan Romano closes games. What's plan B? Is it Zach Pop, who's never had a full big league season? Is it Jimmy Garcia, who is fine, but just fine? Is it Anthony Bass? I hope not. So what I'm saying is, continue to be great, Jordan. Please. We need it. On the whole, this team is real good. I think this team is poised to do great things in the regular season and even better things in the postseason. I think they've got enough assets waiting in the wings who can contribute at the big league level this year that they could really have something percolating by the time you get to July, August, and those guys start to come through. Talking about Pearson, talking about Tiedemann, talking about Zach Pop. I think that they also have enough assets now, guys who have kind of arrived, guys like Otto Lopez, Addison Barger, etc., who if they needed to make a trade to go out and get somebody at the trade deadline, they could probably add a pretty impactful piece. All of this bodes well for their prospects for this year. I thought last year's team could win 100 games, and despite all the things that I mentioned and a few others going wrong, still won 92. So if even a few of those things don't go wrong this year, I imagine some new and exciting things will go wrong this year, because they always do. It's baseball after all. But I still think this team can solidly win in the 95 to 96 win range, and if everything goes right, as occasionally happens, 100 wins is absolutely on the table. But what's key is I think this team will be the one to win the division. Yes, that's right. I think this team has a little bit of an edge over the New York Yankees, who are starting with some starting pitching trouble. They pretty much have Clark Schmidt as their number 3 guy, which is no one's idea of plan A. So yeah, the Blue Jays are in position to make some hay early and then continue to ride throughout the rest of the year, hopefully holding off a spirited charge from the Yankees, because there's always a spirited charge from the Yankees. Oh boy. Anyway, this is already one of my longest videos ever, so I'm going to wrap that up for now. TLDW, team real good. We excited. Yay, let's go Blue Jays. I'll be doing another video tomorrow about how I think the rest of the major leagues is going to shake out. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you're so inclined. I will see you tomorrow. Let's go Blue Jays.